Welcome to the Well Path podcast, where we sit down with experts and entrepreneurs across fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, and spirituality, offering you an inside peek at building a business and a life that is truly aligned. I'm your host, Brooke Robbins. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Well Path podcast. I'm so excited to bring this conversation to you guys. Anna is really an incredible human being. She has lived a remarkable life. She's one of these people that I feel like has lived 100 lives, and we talk about that in this episode as well. From working on super yachts to getting into broadcast newscasting to life coaching, and then ultimately launching Achievher, which is a women's only fitness studio and wellness community here in Dubai. Anna has done so much, and she has such an incredible perspective on life, entrepreneurship, how to really live well. Anna also went through full facial reconstruction surgery in her 20s. We get into that in this episode as well, which is an experience that she describes as both traumatic and also life-altering. And she just has a really incredible perspective and a really incredible story that left me super inspired. And I know you guys are going to feel the same. So I'm so excited to bring this conversation to you. Without further ado, let's get into it. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So excited to have you. You started your career in broadcasting. I want to actually start there.
Yeah.
Can you give us a sense of like what got you into that and sort of put us in the moment there? What was that like?
So my dad originally said when I was trying to figure out what to do at university, you should go and study communication studies. And I honestly had no idea exactly what that entailed. And I had this dream because I was really involved in music, as most teenagers are. I don't know if that was you as well growing up, but I had this like deep desire to be with touring bands and just be able to be a part of, a creative industry. And I had this focus on being able to do that and to use my communications degree and that approach. And I ended up not getting the grades, not being able to get into creative industries, but my second choice was radio. And I thought, oh my goodness, okay, this is not what I had envisioned for me, but, maybe I can produce and be a bit behind the scenes. Very much thinking I'm not somebody to be in front of the camera. And then all of a sudden the kind of, the magic bug hits you when you put the mic on, and all of a sudden you're able to have this ability to speak and communicate and to change somebody's day just with the words that you use and the approach that you take. And that for me was just incredible. And so from there, I started my career in New Zealand. I managed to graduate around the same time as the global financial crisis. And so I spent a few years working on super yachts, a whole other story.
Whoa.
And then ended up coming back to Dubai, which is where I grew up in 2009, 2010, and ended up falling back into radio. And I dove headfirst into it and just took any opportunity I could. I was working a lot and ended up, being able to have some really great experiences and grow my career in the radio and then TV industry. Yeah.
I want to dig into the experiences, but I feel like we just glossed over the super yachts. Can you give us just like a window?
So, picture this. I'm a fresh grad, 2009, global financial crisis has hit. I didn't understand how stock markets in the United States would impact business in New Zealand. It didn't, I had studied communication studies, not business, not kind of understanding the wider economic impact of a global recession. And I had a family friend who, after I had failed to get into all of the major airlines here in the Middle East, said, well, why don't you try super yachts? It's great money. You can travel. There's still lots of jobs going there. And I thought, okay, cool. I can do that. I've done a bit of hospitality work while I was at uni, and I don't mind scrubbing toilets and cleaning showers and all that kind of stuff, and ended up buying a one-way ticket to France and dock walked along every port from Monaco to Cannes and all the little towns in between, and handing out CVs that I would print off at a Wi-Fi cafe because there was no Apple iPhones at that stage. There was no, nothing.
Wow.
And ended up working. I did 2 seasons in the Med and 1 in the Caribbean.
Wow.
So I spent a little bit of time in Florida. And I mean, that was just eye-opening, being able to see how the kind of 1% of the world operate at a very intimate level, being able to understand that even at that level of success or having that amount of wealth doesn't, as I describe it, is, have you escape from the mundanity of being a human. We still at that stage have conversations around, where you're going to send your kids to school and arguing over holiday destinations and, are your in-laws coming and things like that. And so being able to observe and see people in that environment was super eye-opening, as well as living and working together in very close confines with the rest of the crew as well.
Wow. Yeah. That is a crazy story. And so this was like early 20s and you just like booked a flight by yourself to France and were like, okay, I'm going to figure this out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll caveat that by saying that I have two incredibly supportive parents. And so, as a white female New Zealander, I had an incredible amount of privilege and opportunity that was afforded to me growing up. We were by no means, rich or well-to-do, but my parents did make good, sound financial decisions. And part of that was to be able to put us through school and through university without, any student fees or, anything like that. So that I did hit the ground running when I graduated in terms of having a lot of privilege and what opportunities, were afforded to me. And one of those was having my parents say, if this is what you want to do, we'll support you. You've got to save up for it. But I could do it. And then, being able to see that wealth and that scale of success on the other side of it, being inside these super yachts, being able to, see and experience things that, behind closed doors that you would never kind of get to see in a very positive way, I have to say, because I think that there's also another side to these types of environments, which, don't necessarily turn out very well. But I was really lucky in all the experiences that I had.
That's great. No, I applaud the younger you though, because I think regardless of any of that, like going and taking like a big risk and sort of just going out without like anything sort of 100% set, there's like an element of uncertainty that I think is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. Yeah. And it's like amazing to hear that even then. And obviously like there's so much more that you've kind of like built in your life. And I know we'll get into sort of like the manifestation and sort of like the future looking things like sort of in the future that I'm sure you built on. But it sounds like even at that stage, you had this sort of like internal sense of like confidence that you will figure things out and you can take risks.
Yeah. And I think that part of that also comes back to something I know that you probably want to touch on a little bit later, which is the full facial reconstruction. But I didn't grow up looking like I do now. I've had 5 surgeries across 3 years to fully, reconstruct the lower half of my face because I was born with a facial deformity called long face syndrome. And I'm a twin. I have a beautiful, wonderfully smart, funny and loving twin sister. But when you're growing up in an environment where, everyone is getting attention from guys or, being invited out on dates or whatever, and I'm not necessarily the person who's getting that type of attention, I very quickly learned early on that, I can bring my personality to the table and I can be funny and I can be quick-witted and I can kind of think on my feet. And so I managed to grow a kind of whole other spectrum of skills, of life skills in that process, very quickly realizing, okay, I might not have won the genetic lottery, so to speak, but I can be charismatic. I can be bold. I've kind of got nothing else to lose at that stage. There's nothing that anyone can say or do to me that would hurt me as much as I have been hurt in the past. And so, the only way is up from here. And so I think that being able to go through that experience in my teenage years and my early 20s before I then had the full facial reconstruction and going through that also created a sense of resilience and a kind of formidable spirit and reliance on myself that it doesn't matter what anybody else can say or do or what any other decisions would be made outside of my control. I always have control of myself and where I want to go and how much effort and work I can put into things.
Wow. That's a beautiful. I actually didn't know that about you.
Oh, I just assumed that we had spoken about it before.
No, that's so thank you for sharing that. I'm so happy that you did. So, okay. So incredible. So you had this experience, you were on these yachts, you came back to Dubai and sort of like re-entered the world of broadcasting. Yeah. What is do you have any like crazy or interesting stories from that period of your life in radio?
Oh gosh. With a lot of highly competitive industries, and I'm not going to say that media is the only one, but I think, it's obviously the one that I've had the most experience in. I always say love and money can make people do strange things. I saw that on the boats. And then when people get a taste of the limelight and the spotlight, it can also change the kind of human condition and how people then, show up and, what their day-to-day interactions are like with other people. So being able to observe people in that light was really interesting. Yeah. And being able to also understand the side of me, especially working in radio, there's generally a saying, you've got a face for radio. And so I definitely felt protected behind the microphone where I could, perhaps alter my voice or I could use voice as a tone to connect with people. And that was my kind of safe zone. And I moved into TV after I had the facial reconstruction. But being able to have some of those early experiences where, in some of the early days when I was working, we would have some big Hollywood stars that would kind of come. You would get to see music stars, movie stars and things like that would come into the studio. And this also happens with a lot of rich people, is that there's always gatekeepers around people that have positions of power or authority, be that stars or people with great wealth. And it's the gatekeepers that you need to keep happy, and the entourage that you generally need to keep happy. The star or the talent themselves generally pretty much goes with the flow. You know, they know exactly what they've done, but it's the wider circle that generally are the ones that need a lot more pampering, a lot more attention, essentially, and they're the ones that will then decide whether you are allowed in or allowed out. So being able to see that dynamic at play, I think, was really, really interesting. And as well, just kind of seeing the illusions behind people and perhaps the personas that they created for themselves. I think maybe if we were in somewhere like LA or London, this would be seen on a much larger scale. But because we kind of see it in isolation here in Dubai, when these people would come into the studio, you would see the very human elements of it. And I think when I moved into sport broadcasting later, being able to see people who had had a terrible match or a life-changing injury, on the court, for example, I'm thinking about tennis, to see these people break down and cry, this is their livelihood. This is all that they've known. And I think that I was then starting to question that element around, why was I doing this type of work if I had to separate the human element and that emotion from the news, so to speak? And I realized that I probably wasn't the best person doing that job if I was wrestling with this and not being able to suppress it, which a lot of journalists are able to do for the story. And I couldn't do it for the story. I couldn't put it to one side.
Wow, that's so fascinating. So this probably speaks to the kind of transition maybe into something slightly different.
Yeah, I got to the point where I had started jaw reconstruction in 2012, and that was a decision that I made for myself. Okay. Part of it was aesthetics and was how I looked to the outside world, but the other side was, fully around having a functional mouth that I could actually breathe, talk and eat food properly through. I was having a lot of functional issues, and that was only going to get worse as I got older.
Yeah.
And so I had to make the decision for my health, and because I was such a complex case, I was really great to have a lot of support from the local dental industry, and in particular, Dr. Mariam, who still works for the Ministry of Health now. Yeah. And she was able to see what quality of life she could offer me, and was able to stick with me, through those 3 years of wow. really deeply traumatic and life-changing surgeries that I went through. And it was during that time that I had to recluse myself or exclude myself from work, from life, from being, somebody in their young 20s who wanted to go out and spend time with friends and, family and stuff. And I had to exclude myself from all of that. And I started reading a lot of Louise Hay, How to Heal Your Life. I started kind of diving into aspects of Marie Forleo and kind of the generic life coaching scene that was kind of coming up, because I was at that time period, maybe earlier than some of my peers, where I was having this drastic change in life and very much having to understand what I could control and what I couldn't control. Yeah. Being an ambivert and being able to lean into my introvert side with that, being able to hone into the ideas that I needed to not be a part of kind of everyday society and remove myself to, protect my energy was really, really important. And then I really started thinking about, where I was going with all of this, and also having these thoughts around, am I the right person to do this job? I've kind of been pushing this idea of wanting to be this reporter, this journalist, this news presenter, and maybe it's not right for me. And I kind of sum it up with the saying, I love my job, but my job didn't love me back. And I was working really long hours for not a lot of pay. I realized that if I was financially going to be secure in my mid to late 20s and early 30s, that I needed to find another income. And I was also just getting to the point where I thought, this is going to be a rat race. And do I want to be a part of this for the rest of my life? Do I have it in me, or is there something bigger? And I think that was probably where I started to pursue and look outside of it. I also realized that I could very easily go back to New Zealand, or maybe I could have moved to London at that stage. I even thought about going back on the boats at one point. And I thought, any of the problems that I have with me at the moment, I call it like suitcases. We carry suitcases around with us, and sometimes it's excess baggage, and sometimes it's just, what we've got to, what we sort of carry around with us all the time. And I got to the point where I thought, these suitcases aren't just going to unload themselves just because I moved to a different country. All my problems are still going to come with me because my problems live inside of me. They're maybe they're, might be agitated a little bit by the people I'm putting myself, in, or the environments I'm putting myself in. But for the most part, these problems reside within myself. And if I go anywhere else, they're just not going to magically disappear. So I really then hunkered down and thought, okay, I'll stick it out here. I'll stay for a few more years, build on the network that I've already created, and then, see what skill set I can transfer out of it. And so I then moved into part-time radio work, and then also setting up my first consultancy 9 years ago called Nudge, which was media training, personal branding, kind of public speaking training and consulting. And I got to work on incredible projects with amazing people, through all of that. But again, that was a leap of faith. There wasn't anybody else doing the type of thing that I was doing 9 years ago here. There was maybe one or two, but not on the scale that we see now. There wasn't an online element. It was so hard to do things online. We didn't have any online payment gateways. It was just so different, 9 years ago to what we have on offer here now. Yeah.
That's incredible. And with the sort of media training, what was your process there? So you were sort of starting this completely net new, how are you finding your clients? What was sort of your process to get that off the ground?
So a lot of it was word of mouth and just meeting up with a lot of PRs and journalists that I had previously worked with in the media space, and working alongside some existing PR agencies to kind of have a special add-on. But I didn't have a set business plan. I mean, I had some frameworks that I was using, but a lot of it was, intuitive from my comms degree and then also my experience. Yeah. So I was using as much as I could and applying that and really just kind of playing it by ear. At that stage, it was kind of in the post Sheryl Sandberg stage of Lean In. And so there was a lot of focus on women in business. And so being one of the early female, sole operators and startups, there was a lot of focus and it was really easy to gain a lot of traction. And I kind of rode that for a while. Instagram was still very much in its early days. It wasn't anything that was, very big or used in a business sense. It was very much about still having a personal account. Yeah. And I started to grow my personal account a little bit and started to, ride that wave of Lean In, the boss babe element of things, which just worked really well in terms of timing, not necessarily because of synchronicity, with message or anything. Right. And again, I was able to communicate a message clearly. So being able to be on stage or, interviewed by people, having that basis of communications was really fundamental to my success. Had I been somebody who was very shy but had a great skill set, I think it would have been much harder to sell and to translate that into value for other people to see. Yeah.
You mentioned with the facial reconstruction surgery, it was traumatic, but also life-changing. Can you talk through that a little bit if you're comfortable?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
I know it's very interesting because there's a couple elements of this. I wonder how much of it is sort of obviously any kind of surgery. And I think about this a lot as I've also learned more about just energy in general, how energy is stored in our body. It's can be very traumatic in your body, even if consciously. So there's an element of related to maybe somatics, but just sort of the body kind of holds certain memory. And then there's this element of okay, you completely transform sort of the way that you look. And I wonder, you mentioned you're not a shy person. Is that something that you've always had or something that shifted as part of this, or if you could just talk through?
So the process of the facial reconstruction was 5 surgeries across 3 years. And that was all while I was still working on the radio. So I had to reteach myself how to talk. And I had great support at the time from, colleagues and managers that I worked with in order to have the time off, for recovery. But within it, when you talk about anything around your face, it's so deeply tied, with your identity and putting your best foot or your best face forward in life. And when you're all of a sudden having to reconcile with your face changing drastically, at one point I had an 11 millimeter gap between my front teeth because I had a palatal expander and they expanded my upper palate. I was on a soft food diet for a year and a half, basically. So I lost a lot of weight, and looked emaciated, quite a lot of the time. And then the other side of it as well is, just not being able to have the money to do anything else because it cost a lot of money. Yeah. So, financially, emotionally, it was a lot to go through. And then the other side was the pain. I remember waking up in ICU after a 7-hour surgery where it was double jaw reconstruction, chin and cheek. My nose was, I always have people ask me if I've had a nose job. It's the only thing that they didn't touch, actually. And then having, 7 teeth extracted. I've got a full bridge on the bottom, so none of these front teeth on my bottom, jaw are mine. So dealing with that, it's very personal, very invasive. It's very confronting. It's not something that you can hide. There's no COVID in that time. You couldn't hide it with a mask or anything. That would have been great. And so I really had to just own it. There was no other way around it. And yes, there wasn't social media so much at that stage, so I was afforded that generosity. I will say that. But, dealing with the pain, dealing with the frustration and dealing with everything, you all of a sudden, spend a lot of time with yourself and in yourself. Yeah. And then when you're able to come out the other side of that bubble, you get to experience what some people have coined as pretty privilege, which is, and I experienced it, I think for the first time, I think I was in London visiting my brother. And I remember going to get on an escalator to go down to the tube or something like that. And I said, oh, sorry. And just seeing people's reactions, and I know a lot of people will probably be subjective or, maybe have a differing opinion around this and say, oh no, it's probably the energy that you're putting out at this stage. But I hadn't changed so much as a person inside. I was still that basis of a bubbly, friendly, very, very engaging type of person, the desperate people pleaser, if you will. Okay. And then all of a sudden being able to have a different face and having a different response from people in general across the board was eye-opening. And I remember walking into Lime Tree Cafe, Corey and Jackie. I love them. I did a bit of Christmas assistant work when I was a teenager when they first opened up Lime Tree Cafe. And I remember walking into Lime Tree Cafe and walking across the promenade on their Sheikh Zayed Road branch where you've got to walk past all the tables before you get to the counter. And I would normally have my head down, just kind of get to where I'm going and like look up, smile, engage with people. But this was the first time where I was confident enough just to have my chin raised and just to look at that counter and to be able to see perhaps people look over and gaze, which we naturally do as humans to see, who's coming into our surroundings, and feeling a sense of safety in my body and comfort in who I was and my value as a whole person was just like life-changing. And how that kind of leads into the somatic element of everything is that we often take for granted how we position ourselves and our bodies in society. And when we show up to, say, situations like this, where maybe we want to hunch and, be a little quiet in over the camera and things like that, and maybe want to have our hair hide us, or we've got the opportunity to present our whole selves, our full selves, and to really engage with this full feeling that's happening inside of our body. Not so much as a, how can I suck in and make sure that my body is being perfect right now and I'm presenting myself, as I want to, as my best foot forward, but how can I really experience this as my whole self and focus more on how can I provide myself with a sense of safety in this? Do I need to maybe drop my shoulders a little bit? Can I be calm here? Can I be safe in this room, in this space? Can I maybe focus a little bit on what my body needs right now? Maybe it needs a deep breath. Maybe I just need to take a moment before I respond to things, and really engaging with that internal dialogue, with the sensations, the feelings that's happening in my body now, instead of suppressing it and saying, right, I'm going to sit here like a stick and I'm going to hold on for dear life to this chair for the next 40 minutes and everything will be okay because I'm forcing it to be that way, And when we can have that full conversation, that full embodiment of mind, body, spirit, of being able to, as I say, treat ourselves like we do the weather differently every single day, maybe more attuned to London weather, maybe than Dubai weather, which is a little bit more consistent. But, we look at the weather that's ever changing every single day, yet we as human beings expect ourselves to show up consistently in the same way every single day. But life is not consistent. Life is ever changing. And when we build and expand our tolerance window for these changes that occur in life, all of a sudden we're able to experience life much more fully, the highs and the lows. As I referenced, the people on the boat with the insane amount of wealth, they're not able to escape the mundane aspects of being humans, the highs and the lows. Yeah. And, however, grounded you are, however wealthy you are, these types of lived experiences as humans don't escape us either. But how can we show up and experience them more? How can we have more capacity, more tolerance, more grace in ourselves to be able to fully experience all of this and not just give ourselves these these windows or these little glimmers of, oh, okay, I can only be happy for an hour and then I've got to get back to it because something bad might happen. Or I don't want to let all of this grief consume me because I think I might be swallowed up by it. And that's a scary aspect, you know? And so when we start to talk about these really deep topics, I don't talk about them lightly because they're just, you know, fun to read in a textbook, or maybe I've listened to a podcast or something like that around it. But because I have fully gone to the depths of humiliating hell, you know, standing in an adult diaper in ICU, unable to talk, you know, these are aspects of deep humility that I had to dig within myself, you know, in order to experience, or, you know, childbirth, going through, you know, labor with twins, or being able to go through the rest of my jaw reconstruction and have people ask around, you know, what's happening to my face, and, oh, you look a little different, or what's happened, and stuff like that. And being able to really go into those experiences with honesty with myself and say, God, they were hard. And yeah, they make me tear up now, but I learned so much from them. And I have so much more capacity to be able to see what other people are going through, to see what my kids are going through, to see what my husband's going through, family and friends and people that come into the studio, and be able to say, like, yeah, life is really tough at times. Like, life is just, it's inexplainably tough, but it's also inexplainably beautiful and happy. And we get to have these amazing moments like you and me here in the studio. And it's a full spectrum of experience. And when you're able to be present and open to anything that might happen in life, knowing that you've got the capacity to deal with any of it, it opens up your world to possibilities.
Gosh, yeah. I was, I've done some like reading recently in this topic of sort of like non-attachment and kind of like, there's a number of different texts, and this theme always comes up, and it's so hard to really like feel it and like really have it sink in. But this idea of like, we make judgments about what's good and bad in life, but like, what if nothing is good or bad? Like, not to diminish, you know, how traumatic experiences can be. But I think the perspective that you shared is so powerful, because while obviously like that was a very deeply traumatic experience that you went through and it was so hard, you're sharing now, like it gave you this like deep level of appreciation. And I do think you probably accelerated your kind of spiritual development. I feel like for me, it's like not until my like late 20s that I'm like just starting to have, I feel like these kind of awakenings, or like really starting to think deeply about, you know, who am I? Like, which path should I be on? These kind of questions of alignment and like, who really am I here to be? It can come quite like later, you know, it can be something that you really have to grow into. So I think it's so, powerful to hear you share that story.
And that's right for your timeline. You know, had these concepts been introduced to you, you know, maybe 2 or 10 years ago, you wouldn't have been at the right stage in order to take them all in. And, you know, we are the sum of all of our experiences, you know, we are the sum of all of our parts. And two things can be true at the same time. Yes, I can go through a really humiliating experience where I had to have different things happen to my face, and I had to deal with the uncomfortable questions that I didn't want to answer, and, you know, dealing with people talking about aspects of plastic surgery. Sorry, my nose it's running here. I've got allergies. But the other element of it is being able to then also see like, but those situations have also taught me a lot. And even though they were painful, they were aspects of growth as well. And it doesn't diminish the pain that I had, and it doesn't make it any smaller or insignificant than what it was. Yes, it was painful, but it was also tremendously, you know, empowering. And it's the same with maybe the experience of working on the boats as well. Like, no job is beneath me. I'm happy to clean toilets, to scrub toilets, because I can apply that same level of detail and dedication and care and compassion as I can to when I'm building a studio and overseeing construction or working with any of our other teachers. You know, I can bring my whole self to the table, because I know that there are no boundaries on my potential or on what work there needs to be done. There are no good or bad jobs. There are jobs that I might enjoy a bit more and jobs that I might enjoy a little less. But being able to change my perspective and being able to change what I get from it is fully within my control.
Absolutely. Let's get into that. So I want to talk about Achievher. For anyone who's listening who doesn't already know, like, what is Achievher? And I'd love to get into the genesis story of how this started.
So Achievher was born in 2020 during COVID. So I, you know, had been working at that stage for, you know, 5 years in the coaching space as a communications and performance coach. And I had also been working part-time in radio, and then, you know, COVID hit and everything changed, as we know. And so Achievher was first set up as an online platform to be able to provide provide women with, webinars, community online where we could connect and they could have an aspect of, personal and professional development. And we were in a short but firm lockdown period here in Dubai. And then from there, we started to move out of it, compared to the rest of the world. And even at that stage, we weren't able to meet up in large groups. And so being able to do group coaching in person wasn't really an option. But the kind of middle ground to fight the fact that people had Zoom fatigue was to be able to create a product line, which honestly, it was just an element of merchandise. And I was able to collaborate with the incredible team at Prickly Pear at that stage to be able to go into, a lovely collaboration for a series of diaries, journals, and planners. And it was just a little bit of merchandise to keep things ticking over. At that time, there wasn't a clear plan to expand the line or to grow it, to where it is today. And I really am thankful that I was able to partner with, a great team who had great experience themselves and really had the vision to be able to bring the product line to, a lot of where it is today. And with that, we started seeing that the online element didn't really have traction, that people wanted more in person. And so we built the product line out a little bit further, and it became quite expansive probably by 2022. And at that stage, I was doing some small scale events, but I was really wanting to have a dedicated space where we could control the kind of customer journey. And at that point, I was like, okay, I think that this is something that I need to take on board, myself. And so I ended up then taking on board, all of our products and really then being able to steer the company into what it is today and being able to move it more into elements of group coaching, which we are going to be introducing. At the time that this podcast will go out, you would have heard a little bit more about that. But I really wanted to bring in some other elements and being able to work in the wellness space, mainly around performance and mindset coaching. I knew that in order to reach any goals or in order to change your state that you're in at the moment, you can't just think your way into a new being. You've actually got to change the physical state that you're in. So you might be familiar with Tony Robbins' work. You know, if you've ever experienced, some of his seminars in person, he is a very physical kind of guy. He's a massive dude and he gets people to stand up and shake and to scream and to do all of the stuff that maybe unless you're there in person, you don't quite understand the context of. Right. And so being able to bring these elements of movement, of vocalization, of the deep sighing, of somatic shaking, of proprioception, and being able to bring this awareness and this safety within the body, and then being able to tackle the mind was really where I wanted to be able to take Achievher. And so being able to secure the space, which we have this beautiful rooftop studio, being able to work with other partners like our real estate company who has just been so supportive of female-focused business, of local businesses. So, our lead real estate have just been fantastic partners to work with. When you're able to have such a strong vision and being able to have that support from the people around you, it really makes the process so much easier. And because I had obviously learned a lot of these nervous system regulation practices in the process of this, I really wanted to embark on the project of building the studio with a mind to enjoy it as much as possible, because probably this is going to be the first and last time I build a studio, and I wanted to just soak it in as much as possible. And I've also got 6-year-old twins, and I don't want to be not being able to be fully present for them. So being able to bring all of these different elements of mindset, embodiment and somatics, of nervous system regulation, of movement is something that's new and radical and hasn't been seen here. But with myself and Constanza, my co-founder, who comes from the world of embodiment, of a lot of different, yoga, yin yoga practices, and, essentially somatics and embodiment, being able to bring all of that with my mindset coaching and with my movement qualifications that I've done means that we can offer something that's new, that's fully, transformative and is a total mind and body reset. It isn't about thinking your way to a new life. It's about changing your actual state of being, starting with that core, starting with the nervous system regulation, and then moving into these tools of somatics to being able to find safety in the body so that we can create this growth mindset. We can think about, future focused ideas and being able to say, hey, maybe there's potential in this. Maybe there's potential in me that I haven't been able to see before, and being able to move on from there. So that's kind of a brief summary of where Achievher has come to today.
I love that. It's so interesting. I feel like I think about this all the time. Like this morning I did like a just at home, like Pilates, like workout just to kind of like get my body, my blood flowing in the morning. I love to do that. And I feel like every time I do even like 15 minutes of movement, it's it's like you don't really believe it until you feel it, but you do have that like sense. Like you might wake up in sort of a mood or something stressing you out, whatever. And it's like you move your body. And I completely know what you're saying. It's like you have to sort of move your body to change your mind.
Yes.
Also, you have to get your mindset in a great place to really like transform your body. I believe that too. I think it cuts like both ways, but I think it's so beautiful to kind of start from the movement and then bridge in some of these other like mindset practices. What does that look like at Achievher? So what is, could you try for anybody who's listening who hasn't experienced Achievher to like help visualize like what the workout is or sort of what kind of components you bring into the workout that might be different from other types of fitness classes that somebody might have tried before?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got our 3 signature classes, which are Restore, Transform, and Elevate. Restore is our essentially a somatic stretch-based class. So within that, you might experience some familiarity with some poses that you might find in yoga, for example, or yin yoga. But then Constanza will be able to lead you through more somatic-based movements, which will be very small. They're not focused on a specific fitness goal, but they're focused more on the internal experience. And where we hold a lot of our trauma and a lot of our experiences in our body tend to be specifically around the hips and the psoas muscle. And so a lot of these will be activating those. We also have Dr. David Bichelli, who's the founder of TRE, or Trauma Tension Release Exercises. And he likes to say that, you know, we as humans like to think that we are far more advanced and far more intellectual than what we actually are. And if we were, the aliens would have come, you know, many years ago, and they haven't yet because they're probably looking down saying, not too interesting there on Earth. They look like simple beings. And so, you know, you're right. There is an element of being able to move your mood when you do engage in movement. And a lot of people say, oh, I can just go to a HIIT class or I can go to a spin class and I can get, you know, I can just feel so much better. But what they're essentially doing with a lot of these classes are disassociating. You know, you can just focus on the pain that's happening. You can dig deep and not think about anything else, you know, those emails that you have to answer. What we're not saying is conversely to think about everything that's going on, but to instead turn the mind off and turn that direction, that gaze internally. So a lot of it will be prompted to have you engage with what are you noticing, sensing, or feeling in your body right now. And so that might just be a simple movement as you would find in Restore, or in Transform. We call Transform our somatic sculpt class. Okay. So you will have elements that you might be familiar with in a bar or mat Pilates or, you know, traditional burn or sculpt class. But what we also allow you to do in the first 10 minutes is to regulate your nervous system, so that you're not being met with this intense burn all of a sudden, which will spike your nervous system, your cortisol levels, and all of a sudden have you in this fight or flight state that you're just having to suppress for the entire, you know, class duration. Instead, we want to get you into a state where you are regulated, where you are aware of your body. And then all of a sudden we might bring you into, you know, a squat hold, and we might start to pulse. And then we can engage you and invite you to then explore, okay, how can I support my body in this position? Where can I expand and bring the breath back into this? And maybe I want to release a little bit of that, which is our natural human side. If you're waiting in line, you know, at the airport and someone's taking long in front of you, or you're getting frustrated with the car in front of you in traffic, we'll naturally go, oh gosh, you know. But all of a sudden you invite people to do that in a class and they think, oh my gosh, like no. And especially as women, you know, we want to make ourselves as little and tame as perfect as possible. And you ask us to vocalize like, oh, this is a strange feeling. So we do it with you, and we encourage you over and over again. So it might not be for the first 10 or 20 minutes, and you might think, oh my gosh, I'm in a cult. This is very strange. I can't wait for this to be over. And then your body might naturally respond, and it might find a sense of safety in it. And you might drop down into your body and think, wow, yeah, I am carrying a lot of tension in my body. Or you might be able to sit on the mat and think, my body is really placed a little funny today. It's automatically kind of hunching over. How can I just find a little bit of extension through my chest, through my back? How can I drop that tension out of my shoulders, out of my neck just a little bit? What am I carrying there? Yeah. I'm building up to my holidays. I know I've got a lot of work on before I need to go away. And subconsciously, I'm carrying a lot of that with me. Yeah. So I can just support my body right now of being able to drop that. I don't need to hold that tension in my neck. In fact, maybe I can just stretch it out a little bit. And all of a sudden we start to move into this intuitive movement where we're so used to being guided and being able to perform every single instruction in a class to perfection. But what if I were to say to you, okay, we're in a 4-point kneeling and we're just going to start to engage in, bird dog, for example, which is a very simple movement that, most people across the board can do and execute fine. But instead of rushing through it, how can I slow it down? How can I find a little bit more space in my armpits? How can I drop the shoulders a little bit here? Maybe do I need to position my knees and my hips a little bit? Or actually, let me drop out of this and go into a full child's pose just so I can do a little bit of a side body stretch and feel that tension release. And we invite you to be able to do that through class and to not have to execute everything, because every body is different. And we invite that difference. We invite you to feel those internal cues that are happening within. And all of a sudden, when you have more trust in yourself, more trust in your body, then you start speaking up a little bit more in meetings. You might be a little bit more generous in your time. All of a sudden, waiting in line, that's okay. I can just let it go. I can't control any of this, but I can control my internal response. And so that's the type of kind of guided encouragement that we try and do. And then with Elevate, which is my favorite class to teach, it's a kind of somatic cardio experience. So we hold you in a specific exercise like a squat or a modified burpee or a modified jumping jack for anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. And we coach you through it. And it's very beat-based. It's very loud. It's kind of like my mum clubbing experience, so to speak, where we have loud music. We encourage a lot of that external, audible exhaling. And then with that, we also encourage you to then think about, well, what's going on in your mind? Because the mind loves finding these new dopamine hits. I want something different. I want something dynamic. I want to change. I want to have different external stimuli. And we're so addicted to stress here. Dark lights, dark training rooms, being able to have this loud music where you can't hear yourself breathe or think. And then all of a sudden we bring you into these tension positions. And how do I want to respond to this? Can I bring my attention back into my body? Can I feel my feet grounded on the mat? Can I feel that extension through the crown of my neck? All of a sudden, we're playing with this almost a mental battle. And then we start to think about all the other audience members that have come in on our mat with us today. That experience of being cut off in traffic, maybe that argument you had with your spouse or with your friend. And all of a sudden, it's like a tidal wave. All of these things that you've been suppressing or just like not wanting to deal with come to the forefront. And okay, that's a little bit of mental dialogue. But where am I maybe holding that tension again? In my shoulders, in my hips? How can I allow myself to breathe through this? How can I find that resilience and open up that window of tolerance for me? So we balance it by having these down periods where we're able to engage with you in different ways and being able to bring back that baseline. And then we're able to bring you up. So again, it's a full body workout. It's a calorie burning workout, if you will. But the focus is on the internal experience, not on any external fitness goal. So we're trying to marry a lot of different concepts at Achievher. And obviously we're not doing it the easy way, but the response and the testimonials and the life-changing stories that we've heard from women who have been able to experience these classes on a consistent basis, because with anything, you've got to do it consistently, has just been, I think, one of the most heartwarming and engaging parts of it. Growing a community of women who are engaged with actively changing their states every single day and being able to be better for themselves as well as their families and showing up, as their best selves has just been so rewarding. And it really does make me think that, we have a long-term growth aspect here, but the change that we've been able to make in the 3 months that we've been open has been life-changing. And we also bring in all of our products, our gratitude journals, our manifestation cards, our 90-day planners, and everything just works seamlessly for this, entire life change. And that power is with them. They're the ones showing up every day. They're the ones doing the journaling. They're doing the internal work. We're just there to facilitate and to support.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing all of that. I'm like, it's just such a great breakdown for anybody that might not be familiar, and maybe we won't go into so much detail, but like when we talk about sort of somatic movements, is it mostly related to that, like sort of checking in and like looking internally? Is that kind of the main difference?
Yeah. So it's about the internal experience. It's not about any external fitness goal. So you could essentially say that, a lot of yoga or Pilates or any kind of movement, Tai Chi, for example, would be also focused on that. And somatics can be used, interchangeably with somatic movement, somatic yoga. But for a lot of the true somatic practices, and Constanza, she can talk about this till the cows come home. She's so passionate about this. Somatics is focusing on that external experience. So we focus and we use embodied language to be able to bring that direction, bring that focus back inside, and then being able to use this repetition. The body and the nervous system loves repetition, and that's why we do high reps in Transform and also in Elevate and as well in Restore. But it's more about the physical sensations that are going on inside of you so that you have that basis of awareness and you're not disassociating and you're not just pushing through the burn for an external physical or fitness-based goal.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that too, because I feel like it's like for probably a lot of people listening, definitely myself, you feel kind of outed when you're in a good way. It's okay, when it's you're disassociating in your exercise. And I think so many forms of exercise that we do, especially I can speak for myself, I used to run exclusively with music. I would never run without music. Why couldn't I run without music, right? It's so interesting how you can run, 5K easily with music and then you turn the music off and you're dying. I think that just goes to show there is so much of a dissociation sometimes with fitness, and it's such a beautiful practice to bring it in. And I think probably what you've seen with maybe some of your clients and maybe within yourself too is when you do put your mind to your muscle and you actually do focus on what's going on internally, you probably actually also see better results because there is such a strong connection between the mind and the body, right?
Well, this is the thing. When you're able to regulate your nervous system and you're able to, remove yourself from the fight or flight or freeze stage and being able to, engage more in rest and digest and be able to close that, stress cycle from everyday stresses that happen to us. We're not trying to eliminate stress. We're trying to open up your capacity to be able to deal with the highs and with the lows and with whatever life throws at you. And when you're able to do that, naturally your cortisol levels reduce. And so all of a sudden you're not hanging on to belly fat. You're able to make better food choices because you're not emotionally eating in order to fulfill something. You're able to let go of maybe a little bit of control and enjoy a little bit more of life's pleasures. Yeah. And it's about having more of the good and being able to deal with more of the bad, not about eliminating. It's not also about labeling. We try not to encourage, good or bad. It's about meeting everything with neutrality. True. Being able to open up your ability to have radical acceptance on whatever is happening around you. And again, two things can be true. You can accept that bad or difficult things are happening at the moment, and you can still laugh, you can still have good moments. And especially as expats in Dubai, we are subjected to a lot more individual stresses because we don't have those generalized support systems that we would have, should we be at home. And let's be honest, most people move out here because of work, and that becomes incredibly stressful because their visa, their livelihood, their future is tied to their ability to show up and work for 10, 12, 14 hours a day. Or they're here in a relationship, and all of a sudden, if they've moved here and that relationship isn't necessarily going well, again, questioning your future, questioning your decisions, questioning your safety net around you. So we find that, relationships and work tend to be some of the common issues that we see either in our women's circles, our coaching circles, or in just everyday classes and having conversations with people, because these are, hugely impactful things on our well-being and on how we experience life. And I've seen it as well, firsthand when you're tied to a job that is your entire identity, and you love it so much and you want so much from it, but it doesn't love you back. It leaves you with this very empty feeling, and you've got to look deep inside of you to really understand, okay, what's in my control? How can I rationalize what's happening with me now? How can I feel more of what's happening with me now so that I can process it and understand, so I can listen to my intuition, so that I can get back to being able to be, more body-based, less mind-based, less intellectualized. That's why I love therapy, because I used to ask my, psychologist so many questions about, what's happening to me now? And if I could intellectualize it, I could justify it, and, be it good or bad, it was all okay because what's happening to me,
Yeah, it's amazing. I love therapy too. everyone should try it. It's such a great tool to look within. It's I guess that's kind of it. It's there's so many different tools out there. I think working with movement, working with therapy, there's sort of this it's all kind of cut from the same cloth or sides of the same coin.
And we're so lucky these days that we've got the choice of all of these different tools. It might be, TRE that you're engaging with one day. It might be a little bit more of somatics. Another day, I remember getting off a really stressful phone call where I felt, I was visibly shaking. I had adrenaline running through my body. I was in a very stressful situation where I had to make a lot of decisions in a short amount of time. And I was physically feeling the effects of stress. And I just got in my car because I had to go to another meeting. It was just, this hyper level of performance and being able to be switched on at all times. And I just remember getting in my car and just letting my body take over and just going, oh, and you just think, oh my gosh, like anyone's listening probably going, wow, okay, thanks. Like awkward, very difficult to, I don't want to be a part of that. Thank you. Like not today. But when you're able to just, oh gosh, just let it all out and be like, wow, I recognize that I am going through so much right now and I need to support my body through it because otherwise I'll be in burnout, which I've experienced twice, so I know the alternatives. And if a little bit of sighing, a little bit of shoulder shrugging, a little bit of just like letting it all, come out can physically change your state. In less than 30 seconds. Yeah. Wow. All of a sudden, it's like, what else is open to me? How else can I get more of this, Yeah,
and it makes complete sense when you think about it because like if you recognize that everything is energy, right, at the anatomical or subanatomical level, then you think about the energy has to go somewhere. If it's trapped in your body, it's like you can get it out through movement. You can get it out through sound because sound is ultimately also like a form of movement, right? It's like vibrating waves. And it makes complete sense that like then combining those two things would be like a large release. And I think even things like, I know you guys do breathwork workshops as well. I think that's a great
breathwork, sound healing.
tool.
We've got an incredible partner, that we partner with for some of these specific workshops. And then what we're going to be, doing in the Total Body Reset is 6 weeks, focus really on, okay, let's identify, let's audit your life and really see where those energy levels are being supported, where are they being depleted, where are those triggers coming from, how can we talk them through, you with them, and really understand, where this frustration is coming. Is it going back a little bit further in your timeline, or maybe is it something more recent that's cropped up? And as I like to say, we kind of have these, puffs of flames or smoke when something will happen to us. And then the ashes will start to fall down to the bottom of the well, so to speak, just for a bit of visualization. And over time, this pile of ashes builds up and up and up and up. And it's not really much that's left there. It's these like little crumbs of experiences past, but they build up over time and they get to a point where they become sooty and they become black and they sit there. And we've got to blow them away, blow the cobwebs out, let the dust settle, but also, deal with it at some point in time. And we're so lucky that we have these different modalities. If talk therapy isn't something that is necessarily working for you, meditation might also be something because, for a majority of people, they can't drop into a meditation. Maybe a little bit of somatic movement. Maybe, I love to use, DJs and like Ministry of Sound style music and Fred Again in my Elevate classes. Love. So maybe it's, putting on Fred Again and just having a little, 2 second, just like fully shaking out the body. I mean, what have you got to lose?
Totally.
That's the biggest thing. And if you can do it in an environment where we're doing it with you, where it's safe, what value, what is it costing you to stay in this current state? And what would you pay to move out and past it? And what if you had the tools available to you at any point moving forward, to not snap at your kids, to not snap at your coworkers, to be able to be fully present and not worried about how you look in photos, to be able to just go out and have a good time with friends without worrying about anything else, What would you pay to have that? And what is it costing you at the moment? Those are really big questions that anyone can kind of sit with for a moment. Yeah.
Beautiful. Anna, before we wrap, I always go into a little like lightning round. Yeah. So I have a couple of quick questions that I like to ask the guests. The first one is like, what's one product or habit that's significantly improved your life in the last 12 months?
So like, obviously we've talked about somatics quite a bit, and that's been a huge part of my life now for, coming up 2 years. So very grateful for that. Very grateful for my co-founder, Constanza, who can, lead this movement of somatics in the UAE and bring all of her knowledge and being able to work alongside her. I'm grateful for that. The other side of it as well, I will say, is adopting the AIP diet or protocol, which is not designed to be a long-term, method or form of restriction for anyone. And if anyone has disordered eating, you might just want to skip forward, a few minutes. But I had influenza A about 8 weeks ago. And from that, I felt a lot of inflammation in my body, and I do have autoimmune PCOS and endometriosis. And I just felt like I really wanted to clean up my diet without having any caloric restriction or labeling foods as good or bad, but really being able to embody, practice what I preach. How do I feel when I eat this, and why am I eating this? And fundamentally, that's been able to change my energy levels, my sleep levels. Again, it's been able to regulate my nervous system because my body isn't under so much stress and I'm feeding it to fuel it without counting calories, without labeling food as good or bad. It's been a game changer.
Totally. I love that. And I love that emphasis on just, mindful eating, but not, restrictive, just sort of intuitive. So I love that. And what is one non-negotiable part of your wellness routine?
Probably sleep. So my 6-year-olds don't always sleep through the night, and sometimes want an extra cuddle or bits and pieces. And I'm somebody that if you wake me up at 2 a.m., I'm wide awake and can't get back to sleep. Okay. And that was a huge struggle, especially in the postpartum period, trying to deal with with lack of sleep. But my non-negotiable is that I basically don't go out during the week. My priorities are to show up for my boys, for my husband, and for the studio. Those are my biggest responsibilities now. And I can't do that if I'm running on 2 to 4 hours sleep. I'm somebody that needs a lot of sleep. So I'm generally on a good day in my pajamas by 5. Wow. We'll put the kids to bed. And if I can start kind of winding down by 8:30, 9 o'clock and then get into bed, so that even if I wake up at 2 a.m, Constanza will often wake up to a bunch of emails from me.
Oh my gosh.
I'll be productive at that point. Okay. And then I just take the day as it comes. I front load a lot of meetings. Any of my classes that I do in the studio tend to be between 10 and 12. Yeah. So you can get the best of me. And then, I don't go out. I get invited to some beautiful events. I've got great support from PRs that I've known for a long time. And regretfully, I say no to all of them because I'm not going to be good long term, and they're not going to be good long term from me,
Wow, it's like a beautiful masterclass in setting boundaries and honoring them. I think it's so much easier to be like, it's fine, just this one time, or it's okay.
And maybe they won't invite me back if I don't go to this one, or
there's so much chatter around that in your mind. Right?
And when you can just be honest with people and say, hey, my full priority and responsibility is the studio and my kids at the moment, and I don't have the capacity to be able to attend this. I want to support. Is there any other way that I can do that through social media or talking about a wider collaboration with either myself or with Achievher? Totally open to that. And I appreciate that you're putting a lot of time and money and resources into this event right now. And I can't support you with that. So I'd rather let you know early so that somebody else who can attend can take my place. Yeah. And I'm open to any other ideas that you might have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Anna. Amazing. Thank you so much. So where can people find you? Where can people find Achievher?
So our Achievher products are stocked in Kinokuniya, Virgin Megastore, online on Noon Namshi, or also obviously at achievher.com. If you sign up, you can get 10% off your first order. We also have them at our studio. So come and see us at Mayan Mall on the rooftop level. Engage with us on Instagram, either myself, Constanza, or our Achievher Instagram. And, happy to answer any questions or, hopefully have you back at the studio soon as well.
Amazing. I will definitely be back. And hopefully some of our listeners will be too. So thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you.